I want you to imagine just for a second an ancient civilization. But I actually need you to completely clear your mind of the usual Hollywood images.
Right, the typical blockbuster movie stuff.
Exactly. Erase the massive blood-soaked wars, erase the tyrannical kings whipping thousands of conscripted laborers to, build these towering vanity monuments in the desert.
Yeah, no god emperors, no golden thrones.
None of that. Instead, picture a society from 4,500 years ago that feels almost impossibly modern. Like you are walking through cities boasting covered underground drainage systems.
Which is just wild for that era.
Right. The streets are laid out in perfect mathematical grid patterns. The entire economy runs on a highly calibrated system of global trade. And this society covers an area larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined.
It really is a staggering image to try and hold in your head, mostly because it defies the fundamental architecture of the ancient world as we usually understand it.
Because we're taught a very specific version of history, right?
Right. We absolutely are. We are conditioned to look for the towering statues of pharaohs or the massive ziggurats of emperors or royal tombs just overflowing with gold. We basically equate ancient success with monumental ego.
And yet here is this sprawling, hyper-advanced, incredibly sophisticated superpower that completely flips that script. And then it vanishes.
Yeah.
Millions of people effectively wiped from the historical record, leaving behind these pristine cities, but no clear explanation. No ashes, no battlefields, just empty grids.
It is arguably the most profound unsolved mystery in human history. The sheer scale of the anomaly forces us to fundamentally rethink human progress.
I mean, we really have to redefine what an advanced society even looks like.
Exactly. And to really grasp the magnitude of what disappeared, we have to look at the geographical footprint the society established around 3300 BCE. We're talking about the Indus Valley Civilization, and its emergence is nothing short of a logistical miracle.
Let's actually frame that timeline in geography for a second. The year is 3300 BCE. While a huge portion of the global human population is still figuring out, rudimentary localized agriculture.
Just trying to survive the winter, basically.
Right, just basic subsistence. Meanwhile, this civilization is taking root along the Indus River basin. For context, we are looking at an area that spans across modern-day Pakistan, northwestern India, and parts of Afghanistan.
The physical scale of this footprint is where the mind really starts to bend. At its peak, the Indus Valley Civilization covered nearly 1 million square kilometers.
And I think it's too easy for a number like 1 million square kilometers to just sort of wash over a list.
Well, totally. It's just a big number.
Yeah, let's ground that. You could take the territory of ancient Egypt, combine it with the territory of ancient Mesopotamia.
The two absolute heavyweights of our history textbooks.
The heavyweights, exactly. You combine them, and the Indus Valley Civilization was still larger. It is a massive swath of the Asian subcontinent.
And this wasn't just a vast, empty expanse claimed on some hypothetical map either. Historians and archaeologists estimate that more than 5 million people lived within its network of cities, towns, and agrarian settlements.
5 million people. That's the population of a sprawling modern metropolis like Sydney, or a small country like New Zealand.
Right, all operating within a unified cultural and economic framework 4.5 millennia ago.
Which is insane to think about. To organize a populace of 5 million people today requires massive bureaucratic infrastructure.
Yeah.
Digital communication, complex supply chains.
Which is exactly what makes the archaeological findings, or, well, rather the lack of certain findings, so shocking.
Because there's a missing piece here.
A huge missing piece. In human history, massive scale almost universally correlates with autocracy. When you get a massive population in the ancient world, you invariably get a pharaoh, an emperor, or some warlord who consolidates all the wealth and labor of that population to project their own power.
And I have to push back a little here, or at least play devil's advocate, because I struggle to buy the whole peaceful, egalitarian utopia narrative that sometimes gets floated around this topic.
Oh, sure, the sort of romanticized view.
Yeah, because human nature hasn't fundamentally changed in 5,000 years. You cannot put 5 million people into a geographic area, organize them, and not have someone trying to be the boss.
It seems impossible.
Right. You can't maintain 1 million square kilometers of perfect harmony without some level of coercive enforcement. So where is the ruling class? Where are the giant statues of the kings?
Well, That is the defining paradox of the Indus Valley. You're applying a hierarchical model.
Which makes sense based on everything else we know.
Exactly, the idea that power must look like a pyramid, with a king at the absolute top hoarding the wealth. But the architecture and the urban layout of cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa suggests something completely different. It suggests a heterarchy.
A heterarchy, meaning what power is distributed rather than top-down.
Precisely. Instead of a single god king demanding a palace with 1,000 rooms, the evidence points toward a system of corporate rule, or perhaps a coalition of powerful guilds, merchants, and religious leaders.
So it's more like a board of directors than a dictatorship.
That's a great way to think about it. When you excavate these cities, you don't find a centralized, sprawling palace complex dominating the skyline. You don't find royal tombs filled with slaughtered servants and mountains of gold.
Like you do in Ur or Egypt.
Exactly. The focus of their incredible engineering and organizational power wasn't directed toward the glorification of an individual. It was directed toward civic infrastructure.
So the energy wasn't going into building the ancient equivalent of the Palace of Versailles. It was going into the streets. It was going into the daily lives of the population.
It radically challenges our modern assumptions about what constitutes an advanced society. We assume the pinnacle of ancient sophistication is, a massive pyramid in the desert.
Right, a giant tomb for one guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what if true sophistication in the ancient world was a functioning, highly organized society built on civic engineering and public health for the masses?
I love that idea. And let's look at the mechanics of that civic engineering, because the deeper you dig into these cities, the more mind-blowing it becomes.
It really does.
When archaeologists first started cutting into the mounds of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa back in the 1920s, they uncovered thoroughfares laid out in perfect right angles, perfect grid patterns.
And you do not get a grid city by accident.
No, cities naturally grow like spiderwebs usually.
Exactly. They're organic and chaotic. A grid implies a master plan. It means that before a single brick was laid, a centralized authority or a council of planners surveyed the land, established zoning laws, and dictated exactly where streets and neighborhoods would go. It is the absolute hallmark of intentional, centralized urban planning.
And it's not just the layout either. It's the physical materials. The homes and structures were built using standardized bricks.
We really need to pause on the bricks, because a brick sounds like the most mundane, boring artifact imaginable.
It's just baked mud, right?
Right, but the Indus Valley bricks are a technological and administrative marvel. They were created using a highly specific standardized ratio of 1.2.4.
Okay, wait, 1.2.4, meaning what exactly?
The height is exactly half the width, and the width is exactly half the length.
Okay, but why does that specific mathematical ratio matter so much? Why couldn't they just make them whatever size?
Because 1.2.4 is the absolute optimal geometric proportion for load-bearing and bonding in masonry. It allows bricks to be laid in alternating, interlocking patterns.
This gives it strength.
Tremendous strength, what we now call the English bond. It provides immense structural integrity, allowing them to build multi-story homes.
Multi-story in 2500 BCE.
Yes, 2, sometimes 3 stories high.
That's incredible. But the logistical nightmare of enforcing that is what really gets me. We are talking about enforcing a universal building code across 1 million square kilometers, thousands of years before the invention of paper or widespread communication.
It's a staggering level of control.
Right, like a brick maker in a settlement on the Arabian Sea is using the exact same dimensions as a brick maker hundreds of miles away in the foothills of the Himalayas.
The invisible administrative machinery required to achieve that is it's breathtaking. It implies a shared universal system of mathematics.
They all had to have the same rulers, essentially.
Exactly. It implies that people hundreds of miles apart were subjected to the same vocational alignment and standardization protocols. It means they weren't just casually trading with each other. They were deeply administratively integrated.
And they needed those strong multi-story homes because the sources highlight that many of these houses featured private bathrooms.
Yes.
That is an elite luxury even in parts of the world a few centuries ago, let alone 4,000 years ago.
Private sanitation is an incredibly rare priority in the ancient world. Usually you go to a public bath or you just go in the river.
Or in a plot.
Right. But the real engineering flex of the Indus Valley wasn't just having a room to wash in. It was what happened to the water afterward.
The covered underground wastewater drainage channels, I mean, this is the absolute mic drop moment for their urban planning.
The plumbing in Mohenjo-Daro is a masterpiece of hydraulic engineering. We are not talking about simple ditches running down the side of the road.
No, not at all.
We are talking about meticulously constructed brick channels running beneath the streets, equipped with access points, essentially ancient manholes.
Wait, they had manholes?
Yes, for sanitation workers to get down there and clear blockages.
That is, I mean, the mechanics of how they made that work without modern surveying equipment are fascinating. To make water flow underground across an entire city, you have to maintain a precise, gradual slope over miles of terrain.
The gradient is everything.
Exactly. If the gradient is too steep, the water rushes too fast and leaves solid waste behind to clog things up. If it's too flat, the whole system just backs up.
And they engineered the perfect gradient. They even utilized gypsum mortar to waterproof the bricks in the drains.
Wow.
And they built specialized soak pits to catch solid waste while allowing the liquids to flow through, preventing the system from clogging in the first place.
Think about European medieval cities for a second. It's the Middle Ages, literally millennia after the Indus Valley Civilization, and people in London and Paris are emptying chamber pots out of second-story windows into the muddy streets below.
Just dumping it right on the cobblestones.
Right. Cholera and dysentery are rampant. Meanwhile, 3,000 years prior, the Indus people had an integrated municipal sewer system.
It reveals a profound cultural ethos. They prioritized public health, sanitation, and egalitarian urban planning over ostentatious displays of wealth.
It's completely backward from how we view empires.
It is. They spent the society's surplus energy and resources on making sure the average citizen had a hygienic living environment rather than, building a giant golden throne room for a despot.
But maintaining that level of civic plumbing, brick making, and urban density requires an immense amount of raw materials. You need bronze, copper, timber for the massive brick kilns.
Oh, baking those millions of bricks required entire forests of timber.
Exactly. And those things aren't necessarily abundant across every inch of a river valley, so they had to look outward. You can't build a closed-loop utopia. You need an incredible organized economy to feed the machine.
Which brings us to their role as an ancient global economic powerhouse. They were not an isolated civilization.
They weren't just sitting by the river minding their own business.
No, they were the manufacturing and trading hub of the Bronze Age world.
And if the bricks were standardized, it makes total sense that their economy was too. The archaeological record shows they developed a brilliant system of standardized weights and measurements.
And those weights are a masterclass in precision. They were typically crafted from chert, which is a type of really hard stone, cut into perfect polished cubes.
And they weren't just random sizes, right?
No, they followed a strict binary sequence for the smaller weights, so 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and then it shifted into a decimal system for the larger weights.
The precision of those chert cubes is basically the Bronze Age equivalent of the TCP/IP protocol that runs the modern internet.
Oh, that's a brilliant analogy.
It's this invisible foundational set of rules that allows drastically different systems to, talk to each other perfectly. If I am an Indus merchant trading lapis lazuli, and you are a merchant 500 miles away trading grain, we don't have to argue over what a pound or a kilogram is.
There's no haggling over the scale.
Right. The chert cube is the undeniable truth.
And that standardization fosters absolute trust in trade. And trust is the ultimate currency of any global network. Because of that trust, their trade routes just exploded outward. We have found Indus Valley artifacts, particularly these beautiful etched carnelian beads, sitting in the tombs of Mesopotamian elites in cities like Ur.
Carnelian beads are a great example of their manufacturing dominance, actually. Drilling a hole through a tiny piece of extremely hard carnelian stone without shattering it.
Which is incredibly difficult.
It requires specialized micro drills and an incredible level of artisanal skill. They were essentially exporting high-tech luxury goods.
They absolutely were. The Mesopotamians actually wrote about them. In Akkadian texts, there are references to a land called Meluha, which historians widely believe is the Indus Valley.
So they were famous, even back then.
Very. The Mesopotamians marveled at the ships from Meluha bringing ivory, gold, exotic woods, and lapis. They were a deeply interconnected part of an ancient, globalized economy.
But here's the paradox that drives linguists and historians absolutely crazy.
I know where you're going with this.
How do you run a massive international trade network reaching all the way to Mesopotamia? A society so complex it invents universal building codes, municipal plumbing, and decimal-based weight systems.
Yep.
yet leave behind a language we still cannot crack.
Ah, the silent script. It is perhaps the most frustrating historical roadblock in modern archaeology.
We have thousands of these small steatite seals, mostly used by merchants to stamp clay tags on trade goods, and they are covered in strange symbols, a script that remains completely undeciphered today.
To understand why it's undeciphered, we have to look at the mechanics of cryptography and linguistics. Think about why we can read Egyptian hieroglyphs.
The Rosetta Stone.
Exactly. We have the Rosetta Stone, which provided the exact same text in a known language, ancient Greek, right alongside the hieroglyphs.
And there is no Rosetta Stone for the Indus Valley.
None. No bilingual text has ever been found. Not a single one.
Furthermore, the inscriptions we do have are agonizingly short. The average length of an Indus script inscription is only 5 or 6 symbols.
It's tiny.
The longest ever found on a single surface is just 26 characters.
And that's a massive problem because you don't have enough data for statistical linguistic analysis. You can't just feed it into a supercomputer to find the underlying syntax because the sample sizes are too small.
Right? It's like trying to understand the entire English language based only on a collection of, corporate logos and bumper stickers.
That's a highly accurate way to put it. We don't even know if it's a logographic script where each symbol represents a whole word or concept, or a syllabic script where symbols represent sounds.
So we are literally just guessing at the structure.
Pretty much. We can measure the statistical entropy of the symbols, meaning we know they follow a structured grammatical order and aren't just random doodles, but the meaning is completely locked behind an impenetrable wall of time.
It's a tragic one-way mirror. We can see the physical skeleton of their society. We can walk their gridded streets, trace their trade routes to the Persian Gulf, marvel at their plumbing. But their cultural narrative, their soul, really is silent.
We have no idea what they believed.
We don't know their myths. We don't know their laws. We don't know what they called their own gods, or even what they called themselves. Indus Valley Civilization is our geographical label for them, not theirs.
We don't know the name of a single human being who lived in that civilization. Think about that. Over 5 million people. An entire millennium of history, and not a single name survives.
Which makes what happens next even more haunting, because you have a society this advanced, perfectly calibrated urban planning, a globally connected economy, standard weights, robust public health infrastructure.
A well-oiled machine.
Exactly. A society that functions that seamlessly, seemingly without internal wars tearing it apart, seems practically invincible.
It really does, which is why the archaeological record of their decline is so jarring.
Around 1900 BCE, the clock begins to run out. The great cities enter a period of severe decline. The vast trade networks that reached Mesopotamia weaken and snap.
The plumbing starts to fail.
Right. The carefully maintained drainage systems start to choke and clog. Urban centers are abandoned, and the population levels in these megacities drop dramatically. Within a few centuries, this million-square-kilometer superpower effectively dissolves.
The lights simply went out. But it's how the lights went out that completely revolutionized our understanding of societal collapse.
Historically, we are conditioned to expect a dramatic, violent end to empires. Rome is sacked by Visigoths. Babylon falls to the Persians. The sword builds the empire, and the sword destroys it.
It's the classic rise and fall narrative.
Right. And for a long time, the dominant theory championed by early archaeologists like Mortimer Wheeler in the mid-20th century was that the Indus cities were violently destroyed by an invading force, often theorized as nomadic Indo-Aryan tribes sweeping down from the north on chariots.
Yeah, Wheeler looked at a group of skeletons found in the upper layers of Mohenjo-Daro, skeletons that appeared to be sprawling in the streets, and he confidently declared they were victims of a massacre. He literally said the god Indra stood accused of destroying the cities.
But modern forensics and archaeology have completely dismantled that foreign invasion theory.
Entirely dismantled it. When modern bioarchaeologists re-examined those so-called massacre skeletons, they found absolutely no evidence of unhealed trauma.
No sword marks.
No sword cuts to the bone, no crushed skulls from weapons. They were actually hasty burials, likely due to disease or natural causes during the city's declining days. They were not casualties of war.
Furthermore, when you look at the stratigraphy, the layers of earth beneath the cities, there is no widespread layer of ash that would indicate these cities were burned to the ground by conquerors.
No ash layer at all.
There are no massive deposits of foreign weapons. There is zero evidence of a sudden apocalyptic conquest. The people, it appears, just gradually left.
And that concept gradually leaving is actually far more terrifying than a sudden invasion, if you ask me.
I completely agree. A systemic failure is a slow nightmare.
Imagine living in one of these magnificent grid-planned cities around, say, 1800 BCE. For centuries, your city has provided safety, sanitation, and immense prosperity.
It's all you and your ancestors have ever known.
Exactly. But slowly, imperceptibly at first, the systems start to fail. The merchant ships stop arriving from Mesopotamia. The church weights lose their universal authority because trade is drying up. The municipal authorities can no longer mobilize the labor required to bake the millions of standardized bricks needed to repair the infrastructure.
And you can actually see this degradation in the later archaeological layers. It's so sad. The pristine 1.2.4 bricks are replaced by salvaged broken bricks. The grand multi-story houses are subdivided into smaller, cramped quarters.
Slums, basically.
Yeah, the streets encroach on the drainage systems. The kilns for baking pottery are built right in the middle of what used to be public thoroughfares. It's the physical manifestation of a failing operating system.
Gradually leaving implies a generational realization that their meticulously planned urban utopia could no longer sustain them. No amount of advanced plumbing or standardized mathematics could stop the systemic erosion. They were forced to abandon the crown jewels of their civilization, the cities they had built over centuries just to survive.
So, if there were no invading armies battering down the gates, what was the invisible enemy? What force is powerful enough to defeat 1,000,000 square kilometers of urban brilliance without swinging a single sword?
To understand that, we have to look at the autopsy of the collapse, which relies heavily on paleoclimatology and geology.
Not just archaeology.
Right. The Earth itself holds the record of their demise.
The primary culprit points to climate change, specifically a massive shift in the monsoon patterns. The lifeblood of the Indus Valley Civilization was the predictable, heavy summer rainfall that fed the rivers and allowed for massive agricultural surpluses.
You need a massive surplus to feed cities.
Exactly. Without that surplus grain, you cannot feed cities of 40 to 50,000 urban dwellers who aren't farming for themselves.
Scientists have analyzed oxygen isotopes in stalagmites from caves in the region, which basically act as a thousands of years old climate diary.
That's amazing.
It's incredible science. And around 4 to 200 years ago, a period known to geologists as the 4.2 kiloyear event, the global climate experienced a massive, centuries-long drought. The summer monsoons that watered the Indus Basin began to weaken and migrate eastward.
Year after year, the rains become less reliable. The agricultural yields shrink. The rivers begin to carry less